Growing up, you're taught a lot of different life lessons. Some simple, like how to walk, talk, make friends, and socialize, things of that nature. Some are harder lessons to learn, like don't touch a hot stove or coming to grips that Warner Brothers is just never going to make a good DCU movie. One lesson I believe most, if not all of us, were taught was if you have nothing nice to say, then don't say nothing at all. It's a pretty easy life lesson, pretty much simply about respecting somebody's wishes or their actions, even if you don't agree with them or understand them. If you don't like it, then you just keep that to yourself, just mind your own business. This lesson has been lost in contemporary times due to the rise of the internet and social media, giving each and everybody a platform to tell you how they feel, who made them feel that way, and why they feel that way. It's pretty asinine, but it's your right to do so, to voice your opinion, no matter how profound or stupid this opinion is. It is your right to say what you want on these platforms, as long as it's under the guidelines of each platform. So yeah, go ahead, tweet it up, YouTube it up, Instagram story, TikTok, whatever have you. Go wild. Now, let me ask you this. Is it okay for you to push or impose your opinions on others just because you don't like something? Impose your opinion so far that you'd rather, let's say, have nobody read a comic book just because you don't agree with the material or topics that are in said book. In today's video, we're going to go over the history of banning comic books and how this is wrong. Comic books have essentially been banned or challenged since its inception. Back in the 1930s, moral crusaders evoked the notion that comic books corrupted youth, hurt their ability to read, appreciate art, and even made them delinquents.
They read in a comic book may be much the same as a real-life situation they witness. Horror and crime comics upset kids. I'm not talking about any subtle distortion of their emotional makeup. I think that occurs too. But there's a more noticeable, immediate effect. You can see the tension develop as the story gets more gruesome. And if it's a bad one, the kid has a mass of jangled nerves by the time he's through it.
This message of hatred towards comic books was spread nationwide throughout popular magazines at the time, during local town meetings, and some towns even went as far as to do public comic book burnings. Youth groups would try and get rid of comic books by purchasing all the comics in the local area and burning them to a crisp. This type of pushback continued throughout the decades. One of the biggest hits the comic book industry got was when Dr. Fredric Wertham, a New York City psychiatrist, was on the front lines pushing the ban of comic sales to the youth. Wertham also echoed the arguments that comics had negative influences on the youth.
Is this: are comic books good or are they not good? If you want to raise a generation that is half stormtroopers and half cannon fodder with a dash of illiteracy, then comic books are good. In fact, they are perfect.
Wertham built his case against comic books on his social psychiatric practices, in which he examined social and cultural influences on behavior, including pop culture. As time has gone, Wertham's supposed research has been scrutinized. In the Information and Culture, a journal of history, Dr. Carol L. Tilley stated that Wertham's research had been manipulated, overstated, compromised, and fabricated evidence.
Just a very short while ago, an 11-year-old boy committed a holdup in California and killed a woman of 42. And when the police came to arrest this 11-year-old boy, his older brother, who's 20, said, if you want to know the cause of all this, here it is. It's these rotten comic books. Cut them out, and things like this would not happen.
So, yeah, take whatever he says and had said with a grain of salt. So anyways, Wertham was advocating for comic book legislation by showing off his work and studies in professional venues, testifying at hearings, and even giving his viewpoints and criticisms in popular media, such as TV show appearances and radio appearances and things of that nature. Even with all this, no legislation was passed. So as a last-ditch effort, Wertham wrote The Seduction of the Innocents. This book gained a lot of attention, so much so that it prompted the U.S. Senate Subcommittee of Juvenile Delinquency to investigate the effects of mass media with the comic book industry. Senators staged hearings in New York City on April 21st and 22nd and June 4th, 1954.
Doubt, and without any reservation, that comic books are an important contributing factor in many cases of juvenile delinquency.
EC Comics was probably hurt the most during this time. William Gaines, the publisher of EC Comics, was getting hit left and right for his horror comics publication. Gaines tried to rally all the other publications of the time together to fight back against the censorship, but this failed because all the other publications were just trying to come up with a quick solution. This so-called quick solution was the Comics Magazine Association of America, founded in October 1954. Gaines was pissed. At first, he refused to join the CMAA and to submit his comics to be reviewed, but eventually had to if he wanted wholesalers to buy his books. At the time, wholesalers only took code-approved comics. After a few disputes with the CMAA over outlandish stuff like showing a black man as an astronaut in a comic book or making comics with thinking robots, Gaines eventually resigned from the CMAA on October 25th, 1955. He folded his comic book business and started Mad Magazine, which did not have to submit their books to the CMAA. This is just the most popular example of a comic book business being destroyed due to censorship, but was not the only one to be taken down by the CMAA. The CMAA was the predecessor to the Comics Code Authority. The CMAA pretty much became obsolete due to the change of distribution. Under the old system, wholesalers delivered comics to retailers along with other magazines. These wholesalers served as an enforcement arm of the Comics Code Authority by agreeing to handling only those comics with the seal. With the direct market distribution, distributors who specialize in comic books solicited orders and distributed directly to retail outlets. So with that, in 1982, a redraft of the CMAA was done with a two-part document that had broader guidelines that didn't hinder creators of these comics. Thus, in 1989, the Comics Code Authority was born. This code didn't last long. In 2001, Marvel withdrew from the Comics Code Authority to do an in-house rating system, and by 2011, DC and Archie Comics were the last to hold the seal on their comics, which by the end of 2011, both withdrew from the Comics Code Authority as well. So essentially, people were using their religion or were trying to protect the children as a reason behind why they were banning all these comic books and doing these book burnings and all this crazy stuff. And this will be a common reasoning to this day why people justify their reasons for banning books and literature, media. And these codes like the CMAA and the Comics Code Authority were pretty predatory if you think about it. Like during the times of the CMAA, these publications had no other way to get their books out there. There wasn't no internet, there was no direct to market. So they had to go through these rigorous regulations just to get their art and their books out to the public. So they were really taken advantage of. So I wish that these other publications would have backed and stood with Grimes to do something about this censorship, because it was crazy. Imagine what we missed out on, what comics, what artwork we missed out on because of these harsh regulations that were going on at the time, this censorship.
Across America is over books.
A Florida school district has pulled 176 books from its libraries.
The Central Bucks School District have been ordered to remove 2 titles from library shelves. Both books deal with LGBTQ issues.
Even though these comics codes and regulations are here and now they're gone, this doesn't stop people from protesting these comic books, comic shops, and things like that. Throughout the history, there's been so many trials and court cases and hearings over artwork, obscene material, people selling obscene material and things like that. And now we have a new problem arising, the banning of graphic novels. It seems that graphic novels are being challenged and banned more and more each day, especially in Florida. It seems like history is repeating itself more and more nowadays. So right now I'm going to go over a few books that I've read that are commonly placed on these banned book lists. Bone. Bone tells the story of 3 creatures known as the Bones, who are outcast from their home village of Boneville and lost in a human land called the Valley. In the Valley, the Bones find themselves surrounded by talking bugs, vicious rat-like monsters, magic, and the occasional dragon. Created by cartoonist Jeff Smith, this epic follows Phonebo and his 2 cousins, Smiley and Phony, as they meet the Valley's dissidents, becoming embroiled in their society and discover their own heroism in confrontation with the rat creatures and their mystical master, the Lord of Locusts. Bone is a classic, period, point blank. From the epic adventures that takes influence from from other fantasy epics like The Lord of the Rings. The Carl Barks and Walt Kelly influence on the designs of the bone creatures. This comic series is a generational story that's enjoyed by all ages, from elementary schoolers, college students, and your average day adult reader. With that being said, Bone is probably one of the most challenged comics to be published and has been banned at least once before. In 2009, the Bone books were removed from a few New York libraries. In 2010 and 2011, parents from Minnesota and New Mexico challenged the books to have them removed from some libraries as well. Lastly, in Texas, Bone challenged multiple times in different cities and schools. The most common complaint was either drug or alcohol promotion. The comic wasn't age appropriate for the school libraries it was in, and also, which is pretty shocking, was that Volume 2, The Great Cow Race, was politically, racially, and socially offensive. Now, if you've actually read the Bone series, you know that most of these claims are outrageous. Yes, a few characters, mainly Smiley Bone, smokes a stogie here and there in the book. The funny thing about Bone is that it was never intended to be a children's book in the first place, but since it was published with Scholastic and has the Walt Kelly styled main characters, it was automatically thrown in that category of a children's book. Also, it being a comic book and, like I said, being cartoony, it's been bunched in with this idea of it being a child's book. In my mind, it's appropriate for children, so I don't see where the issue is really, but I don't know. And then the last claim about the book being racist is just outlandish and honestly just stupid. Blankets. Blankets is a semi-autobiographical graphic novel about author Greg Thomas's upbringing in a religious family, his first love, and how he dealt with and came to terms with his religious beliefs. The story bounces between Craig and his youngest brother's relationship growing up and his relationship with Raina, a young woman he met at a Christian youth camp. I personally enjoyed this comic a lot. The storytelling was done very well. It was very eye-opening to see how much growing up in such a strict religious family and having such strict religious convictions had a stronghold on Craig's everyday life. Thompson's artwork in the comic is definitely top tier as well. In 2006, Blankets was challenged in the Marshall, Missouri Public Library. Louise Mills, a resident of Marshall, Missouri, filed a request to the Marshall Public Library Board of Trustees to have Blankets removed from the shelves because of obscene material. Mills likened the artwork from the book to be pornographic. She was concerned that the artwork from the book would attract kids to these pornographic images. She also feared keeping Blankets on the shelves would bring the same people who would go to porno shops to the library. Luckily, the Board of Trustees kept Blankets on the shelves. Blankets is such a powerful book. Crazy that this woman was trying to compare this book to pornographic material. I guarantee you she probably just flipped through a couple of the pages and had no context about what was going on in the book. Just saw a couple of there's a few nude pages, nothing really crazy. I just think it's honestly bizarre how people do this all the time and they never really want to read the book. They just look through it, especially with comic books, which is such a visual medium that it always gets scrutinized for having these images, but you don't understand the context of these images in the book. There's nothing pornographic about Blankets. It's an awesome story. It's crazy how it had gotten this scrutiny, especially since this is a personal story about Thompson's life. Speaking of a personal story about someone's life, let's talk about probably one of the most praised and hated comics on this list, Gender Queer. Released in 2019, Gender Queer, a memoir by Maya Koababe, details their journey to identify as a non-binary and asexual and how they learn to navigate family and society. It won both the Alex Award and Stonewall Book Award in 2020 and was a nominee for the IGATS Award for Outstanding Graphic Novel and the YALSA Graphic Novels for Teens. Gender Queer has been the #1 challenged book from 2021 to 2023. In 2023, this comic was challenged 106 times.
Personally, in the sense that I think the people saying negative things about my book are correct, or that it is a valid statement about the quality of my work. But I do take it personally as a citizen of this country who believes in free speech and believes in the freedom of information and who worked in libraries for 10 years and is a huge supporter and lover of libraries. And I think that an attack on libraries, an attack on free speech is an attack on every single American citizen, myself included. So I take it very personally in the sense that I feel like I am seeing the freedoms of our country being degraded. But I do not take it personally in that I think that I have written a bad book.
It's been mainly challenged for LGBTQIA plus content and claimed to be sexually explicit. I read this book in about a day. It's a very interesting comic. I got two things out of this book: stress and knowledge. I was stressed because Maya really brings you to their world, the thoughts and feelings they went through while trying to figure out who they were. it was really stressful and made me feel sympathetic for people who go through this every day. And with that stress, I also learned a lot of information about this community that I'm not usually around or have the opportunity to talk to. So I find this comic to be very important. Even though Maya's story in this comic isn't a one-size-fits-all for everybody in this community, but it gave me a peek and a better understanding of this community for sure. And if the people who are trying to get this comic removed from libraries actually read the book, actually read what the story is about, and not just bothered by the title, then maybe the society could move in a better direction. This comic isn't going to turn your child gay or trans or whatever you're thinking. It's a comic about someone's life, and it's a story that can inform someone or help someone who's going through the same thing. If you look at a lot of these banned book lists, there's always a few LGBTQ plus books on there. Especially nowadays, they've made the trans community the big bad in today's society. The alt-right uses this community as a pundit to push their political views or beliefs, and they're always trying to scrutinize or demonize this community of people. Also, the author of Genderqueer never intended this book to be made for children anyways. This book is meant for people who are 16 and older, people who are in the same boat as them and trying to figure it out themselves. And this also is a good book that you can teach you about what's going on. At the end of the day, banning books is wrong. Keeping knowledge from people is wrong. You shouldn't justify keeping something from others just because you don't like it, just because you don't agree with the politics, you don't agree with the messaging, you don't agree with the characterization of certain things in the book. Like, this is not okay. You are not the most important person in this world. So just because you don't like it, you know what you can do? Don't pick up the book. Don't read it. If you don't like something that's happening on TV, don't watch it. If you don't like what somebody's saying on the internet, don't pay attention to it. It's as simple as that. I also think it's funny how in this country, everybody likes to pride themselves on freedom of speech and not letting the government interfere, and we're going to do what we want. Hoorah. But then you want to take away somebody's right to enjoy a book that they like just because you don't agree with the political views of the book or the messaging or whatever have you. It's honestly baffling. Like, we try to fight these, dictatorships and all of this tyranny around the world, but then in America, we go around and do the same thing.
Start throwing it in there. Start throwing it in there. Start throwing it in there. Burn it. Burn it. Burn it.
Act like we're better. I don't get it. I don't understand. And it just sucks because comic books are hit all the time because they are a visual medium, and not just like a visual medium like movies where something might happen in a movie and you will miss it, like something grotesque, and you'll miss it because it's frame by frame. But in a comic book, there's still frames, still pictures, so like you can go back to that page. People are always like, oh my god, there's a boob, or oh my god, there's this in that book, and it just sucks. It's stupid. And lastly, I'm tired of you guys using children as a reason to justify your bigotry. Stop saying, oh, we're trying to protect the kids, we're trying to save the children. Half of y'all probably don't even have kids, and if y'all did, what are you protecting them from? What are you keeping from them aside from the real world? You don't think when your kid leaves their house, they're not going to see the things you're trying to keep from them? You don't think they're going to see a gay person, a trans person, a black person? Like, you don't think that's going to be a thing they're going to see? Like, why are you trying to withhold knowledge from your child? Like, real world knowledge. I don't understand. Like, I'm a father. I have 2 kids. If my kid comes with me to ask a question, I'm going to tell him or give him the answer. And if I don't know what the answer is, you know what I'm going to do? We're going to get together and we're going to look it up together. Knowledge is power. Why are we trying to suppress knowledge? Why are we trying to suppress information from each other? Because we don't like what they're trying to tell us, because it makes us feel weird or feel bad or whatever. I don't get it. It's just, I don't know. I'm just a guy on YouTube and I like to make comic books. That's it. I'm not an activist. Anyways, I am a cartoonist. Currently sold out of my copies of Spider-Man Nobody Saves. Thank you everybody who's bought a copy of the book. Like I said, it's sold out in about a month, so that's pretty cool, pretty awesome. Thank you for everybody who's checked out the website, everybody who got a copy, and all that jazz. Just because you couldn't get a physical copy of the book doesn't mean it's gone forever. You can download a free copy of my Nobody Safe book and a couple other comics on my website for free. Just download it, check it out, and leave me some feedback and let me know how you feel. I'm currently working on a new project. It is a horror comic. I'll throw some pages up on the screen so you guys can see the artwork that I've been working on. And yeah, man, I'm outside of just doing this YouTube stuff and putting these videos out, I've been cooking up a lot of great comics. I also have a couple anthology comics that I have coming now. I'll put some of the links where you can buy some of those books. I contributed a couple pages to a book called Troll Call, which is a suicide prevention awareness type book about internet trolls. It's kind of a goofy, funny book, but it has a very serious and strong messaging behind it. And the proceeds to the book go to suicide prevention. So the link for that, for you can buy copies in the description. I have a bunch of other stuff that I've been doing. You know, follow me on Instagram so you can see my artwork. Subscribe to my newsletter so you can get all the updates when I drop new videos and new books. And the final thing, I started a live stream show on my channel. So every now and then I'm going to go live with a creator that I find interesting, and we're going to chop it up and talk about comic books, the process of making comics. And these guys are going to be creators themselves, so I'm going to talk to them about how they got into making comics and things of that nature. I have about 3 episodes right now on my live stream tab, so go on my channel, click the live stream tab. I have 3 episodes up right now, a couple more scheduled out for the near future. So outside of these video essays, I'm going to try to do those as well in between time. So again, thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, go check out some of my other videos, and also shout out to the Comic Book Defense Fund. I pretty much got all the information from my book from their website. I'll click the link to them. They're a good resource that helps fight against these grotesque censorships of comics and media, stuff like that. They've helped out a lot of people. They also helped out Mike Diana. If you didn't watch, I had a video about Mike Diana. Go check that out. I'll leave the link to that also in the video. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.